I want to talk for a couple minutes on science because it's got so much prevalence in our world today, with our medicine, I always think of science in terms of medicine, but I know that there's science for many, many things. So, science is a process. It is not a statement of fact. It is a process of having a hypothesis, of experimenting in a way that causes no harm, and then chronicling your results. That's basically all science is. Now, modern day science has come up with all these techniques and methods and standards of how you're doing science for this modern day world. But if we really go back in our history, and not that far back, maybe, give or take 100, 150 years, science was an actual process of observation of the natural world. Science was a process of the observation of the patterns of the natural world. Our modern science, at least in terms of medicine, really doesn't take into account the natural world. And I guess my question is, if you're not taking into account how things have happened in nature for hundreds of millions of years, what are you actually studying? Do you know what I mean? You've got a process called science, and it's the observation of patterns in nature taking place for a very, very, very long time. And now you switch that process to being in laboratories to develop things that actually aren't even natural. Just for instance, the COVID virus is a bioweapon. It was created in a laboratory through very specific processes that they used to make a lot of people sick. It didn't come from a bat in Wuhan, because nature's science wouldn't create something like that. But man's science did. And while man's science may have been reporting certain truths about that particular thing, and I'm just using that particular thing because it's so recent, but while man's science could create something like that and then use its media to spread this quote-unquote science lie around the world, I have to say that I don't really trust their science. And they also used their quote-unquote science to develop a quote-unquote remedy for the bioweapon that they created. But if they were truly adhering to scientific principles in the creation of the shot, and then millions of people got sick, died, got COVID again, how could we possibly trust their science? Unless that science was brought to us under the auspices of massive fear. And utilizing a legal loophole of emergency use authorization to get things into people that have not been validly scientifically tested. And when your results are showing bad results, you don't keep going with it. You stop. Like, if you're using the science to say it's science to get everybody to trust it, then you also have to be held in accord and accountability for when your quote-unquote science doesn't have very good results. And these should be long-term observable results. But when you report results and you're using the scientific process and then you're manipulating the shit out of it, that's not science. That is not somebody I would trust, honestly, with anything. And yet, look at how many people trusted it. And not only that, using fake science, and this was fake science because this entire process was not done or conducted properly. It was based on an intentional outbreak. It was based on false numbers and lies because the companies knew the outcomes, but they still released it. And then it was mandated by the government that if you did not trust the fake science, you couldn't go to your job, you couldn't go to school. I mean, not for nothing. I get it that it happened. But we are 2.5 years into, almost 4 years actually, into such a complete scheme that took out so many people, that caused so much harm, that created such havoc and chaos for people, from finances to losing loved ones to, being locked in our homes for a year. Like, I get it that we want to go back to normal, but if we don't take a look at how the science process was so utterly and completely hijacked and then used against the people, and then we don't hold these people accountable for what they did, what they're still doing, what they're trying and planning to do in the future, there's a really big problem there. Really, really big problem there. Because when you allow someone to get away with something on that scale and that level, and they are not held accountable, Lord knows they're going to try to do it again. And when you take something like the process of science and you so highly and deceitfully, and actually also too blatantly manipulate it, no one should ever trust your word about trusting the science ever again. That's why it's really important for us to understand the scientific process, to understand that part of the universe's science is your gut instincts. And you need to trust those, not the people that tell you to trust the science and then lock you up, kill you, or kill your loved ones. That's not science. That's a fraud.